All right, I've come to a critical part of this case. You can see I've got the case laying on some pads on the floor here on the back side. I planed off that center divider, got that flush. Spent the last little while here making these 5 pieces that are going to be the face frame. The 2 long stiles, or rails I guess, 2 long rails, and then the 3 stiles. Now the center divider is going to have this detail where it's going to come into the top and bottom at a 45-degree angle or a 90-degree angle down here. That's picking up a detail that was in the headboard, the center of the headboard. So I've only got, I shouldn't say I've only got 1 shot, but I'd like to do this in 1 shot. Get these 2 exactly right, then get the centerpiece exactly right. And that's the way I have to attack it. I've got to build this from the inside out, making sure that these are cut perfectly, and then this nests into that V-cut perfectly. So I've taken the time. These 2 are exactly the same length, so I can make them mirror images of each, each other. And then the 2 side pieces and the center pieces are going to have to be just cut meticulously as I can, and to get that perfect miter in the corners, and then this perfect miter in the center. So the adventure begins with some critical layout work here first. Well, there it is. Now if I can just execute it, giving it some thought. This piece here, the first cut's going to be kind of a no-brainer because I'll cut it on my table saw, flip it side for side, and that will assure that I get a cut exactly in the middle. I could then take that and use it as a template, I suppose, and trace my lines, but I should be good. As long as I've got the blade height set correctly, it should meet at that point right there on this piece. Again, flipping it end for end. I'll probably end up cutting it shallow here first, and then just kind of sneaking up on that until I get exactly what I want. Now, I forgot to mention that while I was milling up my oak, I also milled up some of this fir. It's exact same width as my pieces here, so these are going to be I'll make my test cuts on these first to see what happens. I didn't want you to think I was just going to do it right away on these. That would be insane. Well, here's a quick tip for setting your blade up exactly 45 degrees. Once you make your 2 cuts and you put your square on there and it's absolutely no daylight, then you know you've got it set perfectly at 45 degrees. I'll be using this method in the future many times. I don't know how many times I was checking my miter cut with a miter, the 45 on my tri-square, when all I needed to do was do this much faster and absolutely much more accurate than what I was doing before. That is perfect. Perfect. So all you do is just keep running your piece across the blade, and then once when you first check it, when I first checked mine, I had daylight down here on the heel, so the square was hitting the heels first, so I had to take more off, which meant I had to tilt my blade further. And I think it took me about five attempts, but once I got it dialed in, that blade I know right now is set perfectly to 45 degrees. Since this is a test cut, I'm not really concerned about overcutting or undercutting, but I do want to mention that I did get some tear out on the back side of both cuts actually. So I'm going to have to make sure that, you know, the inside would not really matter, but the outside, you're going to get one on the outside for sure. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I'm going to try this on my test piece here. I'm using my fence as my center point to locate center. I've got this up on my line or close to it. Let's just see what happens here. Slightly overcut, which means I would have to lower my blade just a hair. Well, no, I don't either. I've got to widen my cut a little bit. Hopefully you can see that. My shoulders here are sticking out yet, so they have to go in some, which means I've got to move my fence over just a little bit. So I'm going to set my micro adjuster here and bring it over about a 32nd of an inch. I screwed up on that first or second time I passed through. I didn't have it tight against my fence. But that right there is darn near perfect. I've got to come over just a little bit more. Just a fraction. Well, I think that's perfect right there. You can see on this side the cut is great. On this side, that's where I screwed up. That's why I've got that little gouge right there. Yeah. I may have to lower the blade just a fraction. And I found another piece that's very close to this, just a fraction shorter, so, and the height doesn't matter. So I moved my fence this way just a shade, I'm going to drop my blade a little bit and see what happens here. See if I can finish that cut with the handsaw. I've got to widen my cut just a bit. But you can see by dropping my blade, it leaves just that little bit of nib in there, and I can finish that up with a chisel from both directions. So I'm going to widen it a little bit and then do that, and we'll see what the fit looks like. It's nearly perfect. That is perfect. I can't do any better than that. That's a nice joint. And here goes nothing. I've got 2 boards in here as spacers against my miter gauge. That's so that this lines up with the blade, just barely. So that should eliminate the tear out. And then when I bring my actual piece in here and bring it in and clamp it, it's got a little bit of a spring this way, so I've got to make sure I hold it down tight to my table. I guess it's not too bad. Maybe it's because I cleaned off my table too to make sure I didn't have any debris underneath it. So yeah, that's tight. So I'm going to clamp it to make sure it doesn't move. And hold it down. Then I can flip it end for end. Tight to my fence. Make that first cut. I am just shy of that line, which is where I want to be. I don't want to be too, if anything, I'll move it over just a little bit, but that should be exactly what I want. Right, that's what I want. That nib is a little bit bigger than what I want. But let me just see what I've got here. That's just about perfect. Take my actual piece. So I could raise that blade just a bit. Yeah, it's a little narrow. Get that right on the line. Yeah, not a lot. Let me see here. You know what? I am not going to mess with that. That is wonderful. Oh! Flip it around once. Yeah, that's nice. Very nice.